Oh, yeah.
Hey, just wanted to let you all know that we're going to start recording, just so we have it ready and don't forget to start. Is that okay?
Yeah, we'll be serious now.
Okay, thanks. And it's almost 9 o'clock, so whenever you have a quorum, you can call the meeting to order.
We're waiting on confirmation of the quorum. Here, I'll bring up. There's
What do you have, Jonathan? I have six.
He's adding numbers, carrying the one.
What?
Three,
Very confusing.
4. I think we've got a quorum now. Lee,
Yep.
We good, sir?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. I got the thumbs up from General Counsel. We're good to go. So we'll go ahead and get started. Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to this month's IT Strategy Board meeting. Needless to say, it's been a very busy 3 months here for me since arriving in March and since our last meeting. But first and foremost, I want to take the opportunity, and I'm hoping I didn't see Rocco by. Hopefully, Rocco's on the session here. I just wanted to do a public appreciation and shout out to Rocco, our vice chair here. Over the last couple months, he's been behind the scenes working with Susan and the team. Orchestrating some of our committee subgroups, talking to our committee chairs, and something we'll go in a little bit later here and talk in more in depth about. But while the fire hoses were attached to me, I appreciate Rocco's willingness to step in there and make a lot of things happen behind the scenes. So again, thank you, Rocco, for all your help. Look forward to our continued partnership and collaboration on the board. As always, please, board members, feel free at any time to ask questions. We know your time is extremely valuable, and we want to make sure we're maximizing the most out of it. Just some quick updates from me before we get to the heart of the matter of the board's business. As I said earlier, it's been 3 months. Confirmations behind. I would like to say that was a fun process. We'll leave it at that. But anyway, we're here now and we're ready to start moving forward with a lot of good things. And the first thing I want to talk about real quick is when I came here to North Carolina, the one thing that I saw was missing was an enterprise IT strategic plan. We are in the process of drafting one right now. We're going to have an executive retreat here of my leadership team on the 28th, in which we're going to go through and take a look at this draft strategy plan. But I just wanted to share with all of you real quick, and we will share this with you in the upcoming months, so it's not like you will not get to see it. But there are 5 primary statewide goals that I'm hoping to achieve here and build collaboration and consensus around. The first one is fostering a connected North Carolina to improve opportunities and outcomes for all North Carolinians. You can insert the word broadband if you'd like. But we'll talk a little bit later about the importance of high-speed internet connectivity to our state. The second goal is around the transformation of service delivery. Third goal is strengthen and secure the state's IT and application portfolio. Our fourth goal, and one I'm really going to focus in on it here shortly, is around promoting an inclusive and innovative workforce. People are our most important asset in IT. It's not the technology, it's not the blinking lights. It's people, and we need to make sure we're investing in people and preparing our staff for what the future is going to hold here as technology constantly changes. And then lastly, but not least, is leveraging data assets and analytics to further advance a data-driven government. I think the pandemic has clearly demonstrated the value of data. And when we break down the data silos and start bringing all this data together, the outcomes that we can achieve are powerful. And I'm hoping that we're going to continue to do that. So I just wanted to share very quickly a little bit about what we're looking at for an IT strategic plan. I'm going to have my exec team get an opportunity to go through it. Obviously, under those goals, there's objectives, and then under each of those objectives will be outcomes and measurements. We're going to involve the state's IT community in the formulation of those outcomes and metrics so we can get the IT community's involvement across all these goals. But stay tuned, more to come on that. The next thing I want to just quickly talk about, because it is my #1 priority, is really about closing the digital divide here in North Carolina. And as you all know, the governor is very clear about 4 main goals for the state of North Carolina. It's about an equitable North Carolina, it's about a prosperous North Carolina, it's about an educated North Carolina, and it's about a healthier North Carolina. All 4 of those things have a key component to them, and that is high-speed connectivity. As we move forward in a digital economy here in North Carolina, high-speed connectivity is a must. It can't be a want, and it can't be left behind lacking. We have over 1 million North Carolinian households today that lack high-speed internet access. If you look at the latest population numbers for our state, that's almost 10% of our state that's on the wrong side of the digital divide. That is a number that's too great, and we cannot have that go carry forward. And when we talk about high-speed internet here in the context of this discussion, it's not the FCC numbers of 25 down and 3 up. We're looking at a more achievable speed rate of 100 down and 20 up. The ARP Act, the interim rules that were released by Department of Treasury, has an aspirational goal of 100 megabytes symmetrical. So it's 100 down, 100 up. We recognize in our state that that's probably not achievable here in the next couple of years. We got all kinds of challenges, geography, topography, etc. And we recognize that we have to make sure that we're using all tools in our arsenal, fixed wireless, looking at hotspots, looking at low Earth orbiting satellites, while we recognize the need to build out the infrastructure that fiber will support. But basically, to achieve 100 meg symmetrical, we're talking about fiber, or in some cases, cable can deliver that as well. But some of these other technologies today probably would not be able to deliver those speeds. But we feel it's important to get North Carolinians connected. So the governor's plan really is around 3 primary focal areas, with the aspect of equity woven into all 3 of them. First and foremost is about a build out of infrastructure. We know the second area is around affordability, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then the third component is around digital literacy and enablement. So what the goals are here is by 2025, North Carolina will now become a top 5 state for high-speed internet adoption rates in the country. And we're going to eliminate North Carolina's digital divide by making home internet subscriptions affordable to all households, especially those with children. The goal here is any household with children, we have 100% connectivity for. We want to make targeted investments to close the gaps in adoption that impact Native American, African American, and Latinx households. If you've seen in the census data that's been, I guess, getting released here, North Carolina is the 6th largest growth rate here in the country. We had almost 1 million new residents come to our state. It's the 4th largest in the South. Obviously, Texas and Florida are 1 and 2. Georgia is the only other state that's ahead of us. But with that said, we've seen a 10% growth in the Latinx community. And a lot of the areas that the Latinx community is settling in right now in our state is towards the eastern part, where there is very little high-speed internet connectivity at all. So we have a lot of work here to do. We know today Native American households, 57% right now, are connected with an affordable subscription to high-speed internet. African American households are around 64%, Latinx households are around 67%, and white households are around 76%. The last part about this too is we got to make sure that we're getting people access to devices and that they're getting the appropriate digital training and literacy programs to include cyber. Cyber is everyone's responsibility. We have to make sure that today, as we are onboarding more people to the digital highway here that's being built in our state, that all people understand and the ramifications of cyber and don't fall victim to the bad actors that are out there doing their thing. So with that said, we want to increase those adoption rates across all racial subgroups to 80%. That's our goal by January 2025. We want to get all households with children at 100%. And again, it goes without saying that we want to increase the overall broadband internet access today within North Carolina from 95.5% to 98% as well. So very ambitious goals here for the next 4 years. The governor's plan recommended a spend of $1.2 billion of leveraging the ARP funds that are coming from the federal government. I won't get into a lot of the details around it unless you have specific questions, but basically $600 million of that $1.2 billion was targeted for infrastructure. $420 million of that proposed amount was targeted on affordability. Another $165 million of that amount was targeted for digital literacy and enablement programs. And then the delta, which is about $15 million round numbers, was focused on administrative costs. And if you think about the fact that today our Bureau of Broadband Infrastructure Office, I just want to say Bureau, I'm sorry, Jeff Searle and his team, he's got about 8 to 9 people that are doing a mighty effort to manage $15 million in grant programs. We need to expand our resources and to be able to adequately manage a $1.2 billion program. And so that's the purpose of those, that $15 million of operational support funds over the 4-year period. So I'll stop there for a second, and I'll ask Nate Danny to jump on here real quick and just kind of give an update on some of the broadband legislation that's currently going through our General Assembly. Nate?
Thank you, Secretary Weaver, and thank you, members of the board, for your time today. I wanted to quickly update you on 3 primary pieces of broadband-related legislation that we're tracking closely, 2 of which are kind of critical elements of the governor's plan that Jim just referenced. The first is House Bill 947, which is a bill sponsored by Representative Dean Arp, who's the creator, one of the creators of the Great Grant program that DIT houses. That bill largely corresponds to the governor's infrastructure proposal. It is a $350 million appropriation to the Great Grant process, with some, not all, but some of the key reforms that we proposed as a part of that proposal, streamlining the protest process so that we could get money out the door more quickly, opening up all counties for eligibility for grants instead of just Tier 1 economically distressed counties, and upping speed thresholds before you could even have a 10-1 project receive grant funds. And I'm sorry, I breezed through that, but a project that would only deliver internet speeds of 10 megabits per second download and 1 megabit per second upload speeds. So not in keeping with full participation in the digital economy, to say the least. They've upped that to a minimum of 120 with a preference for 100 symmetrical download and upload speeds, consistent with the governor's proposal. So we've seen a lot of good wins there. There's still a few areas where we need tweaks on that legislation. They also propose a $400 million completing access to broadband program that is very similar to the governor's competitive bidding approach as an infrastructure delivery vehicle, so that DIT and counties could work together to issue an RFP to solicit provider investment in a given area of unserved or underserved households. So that's another significant, I think, improvement for the state of public investment in broadband. They state that they will invest $400 million, but they don't actually appropriate it in this legislation. So that's my only real complaint, is we know that other states are chomping at the bit to start investing in broadband infrastructure, and we're going to have to compete with them for conduit availability, labor availability, supplies. And so we need to hit the ground running as quickly as possible. So we'll continue to work with the General Assembly to expedite that appropriation and to move further down the path on affordability and digital literacy investments that are key to both the governor's plan and to the end goal that we share, I think, with the legislature of having, everyone in the state who has a school child in their household subscribe to high-speed internet, right? To have 80% of North Carolinians overall subscribe to high-speed internet, to have everyone with access to high-speed internet. So good legislation. It's a good step in the right direction, but we need to do more, and we'll keep working with them. I'll quickly flag two other pieces of legislation that are relevant to this discussion. House Bill 189 is a $1 million appropriation to DIT for mapping. Jim mentioned a 95% connectivity rate early on, and that is based on FCC data, and it's the best data we've got, but we know that it's flawed, right? And we want to do more proactive household or location-based mapping to get a more accurate picture of who's got internet and who doesn't, who has access to it but can't afford it, and so on and so forth. That mapping investment is absolutely critical to delivering on the rest of the governor's $1.2 billion plan to connect everybody and to permanently close the digital divide. That has passed the House, and we await action in the Senate. So we will see where that's going. And then last but not least is House Bill 815, which is currently up for discussion in the House. And it is a bill that does two primary things. It expedites, it relieves some regulatory issues for internet providers dealing with local regulations, and a $100 million pot of funds that communities and co-ops can access to replace telephone poles in support of larger broadband projects, particularly in support of those projects that were awarded to the state under the FCC's Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, which is going to cover a great portion of the state, and is key to hitting the governor's goals for infrastructure access. The other thing it does is gives counties new authority to attract public-private partnerships with internet providers to make some of those same investments. So there's some good and some bad in that bill. There's some things that I think need some additional work, but again, we're seeing the legislature reflect and share the commitment of the governor to closing this problem out once and for all. As Secretary Weaver said, with COVID has really revealed what a unique challenge we've got and how urgent this challenge is. And with the American Rescue Plan funds available, we really have a unique opportunity and time to address it once and for all. So it's good to see everybody mostly rowing in the same direction. That's it for me, but I'm happy to take any questions from the board. Mr. Secretary, you might still be muted.
Yes, I am. I was trying to get it before you got those words out. If you would, please, could you put in the chat message about EBB and then the speed test? And what I want to do on this topic is just wrap up and say, how can you help us? We need your help in communications. As good of a job as we're trying to do across the state in communicating about the emergency broadband opportunity that's out there, which offers up to $60 and to offsets the cost of high-speed internet connectivity. While we have over 1.1 million people here in the state of North Carolina that would be eligible for that program, we only so far today have seen about just south of 75,000 as of Monday actually get registered for the program. This is an opportunity for, here to leverage a federally sponsored program to help out our residents of our state. So we need your help in communication across that, whether it's across your universities and campuses, it's at your community levels, things of that nature. And then likewise, the other area that would be a great help for us is the speed test that we have. As Nate said, the best source of our data right now is from the FCC, which we know has some flaws in it. As part of the mapping exercise activities, the more we can get down to that granular level at addresses as to what are the current capabilities that are existing, that's going to help us profoundly as far as where we make investments, how we go forward, and doing certain areas of opportunities and trying to target to get the best outcomes. So as much as you can help us across your various communities, please do so. We're continuing to look at how can we refine our communications process to make sure we're hitting all North Carolinians. Little concern right now that probably 80% of the responses roughly coming back seem to be coming back from homes or households that have individuals residing there with higher levels of education. And I'm concerned that we might be missing out on portions of our population that, A, don't understand what we're trying to have them to do, or B, they're not getting the message to begin with because they have no internet connectivity at all. So it's like both sides of the sword, so to speak. So again, anything you can do to help us out in those areas would be greatly appreciated. And we'll make sure that information's out there in the chat for everyone's knowledge and then dissemination. So thank you on that. Moving on, if there's any questions about broadband, just real quick. I'm not seeing any hands, so we'll go ahead and move on then. This week, I was very fortunate to have both Nate and Mark Newsom, my CFO, attend the House IT Appropriations meeting. I thought that was a great opportunity for us to talk about IT, DIT's budget in particular, and then as well as Director Perus is here, we are at a transformational opportunity here in our state's history with the funding that's available to us to really go and do some transformational things here over the next couple of years and really invest back in the state of North Carolina for outcomes that will benefit everybody. And the two things I think the takeaway was, and I know Representative Sain and some other members of that committee took away from, was A, they've now understand how much of DIT's budget is locked. And by locked, that means I have no discretionary ability to go do things. 80% of my budget is basically fixed in certain revenue streams, pass-through streams, those types of activities. The second takeaway they had was when they saw that only 2% of my budget goes to cybersecurity. That is woefully inadequate, as we all know. And talking about cybersecurity real quick, I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware that Maria Thompson has left our organization. She has joined the dark side of the force and is working for Amazon. She's has a great opportunity in being the head of I don't know if she's the head or not, but Amazon standing up a vertical for state and local government focused on cybersecurity. I could not think of anybody more qualified to go into that role with her years of experience and knowledge. And so while it's going to be our state's loss, the country overall will benefit from her experience, and we're extremely happy for her. With Maria's departure, Rob Main, who's on the line here as well, is serving right now as the interim chief risk officer, and he will be involved in some of the committee discussions occurring later today. Also, just wanted to reiterate the fact that we continue to see across our state cyber attacks, I hate to say it, on a daily, if not weekly basis. Just last week alone, another phishing, credentialing, harvesting scenario at a local municipality. We saw at a community college malicious website spoofing that required action. And, we're still in the midst of ransomware cleanup and supporting a local entity as well. So these things continue to occur here in our state. We are not immune from the cyber threats and the cyber activities that you all hear about on a day-to-day basis. And it's extremely important that we come together holistically and start looking at the state of North Carolina, not state government, local government, as separate things, but marshal our forces together and look at the entire state, because at the end of the day, we're only as good as our weakest link in the process, and we don't want to have any weak links out there. With that, I'm going to ask Lee Jackson real quick. There is one House bill that's really focused on cyber at the moment. I'll ask Lee to give a quick update on House Bill 813.
Thank you, Secretary Weaver. Good morning, board members. So yes, House 813 was filed in early May this year, which ended up being very timely with the major pipeline incident. And as the Secretary mentioned, we've seen significant increase in incidents and have actually heard of many that went unnoticed for a long time. So this couldn't come at a better time. So Representative Sain filed this bill, which would do three things. So first, it really addresses the ransomware payment piece, and it would prevent the payment of ransomware for state agencies and local governments. and also prohibits any engagement in discussion around potential payments. So we have heard that when the possibility of payment exists, that entities, especially at the local government level, tend to engage in those conversations. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen. Secondly, it specifically calls out local governments and requires that they report cybersecurity incidents to DIT. Last year, we were successful in having legislation go through that required state agencies to report to us. Local governments are only encouraged currently. And that's where really, if we don't know about it, we can't get in and help ahead of time. So that's a positive, very positive step, especially in the effort to not look at this piecemeal, but as a whole effort for the state. And then also the legislation will require DIT and DPS to coordinate on the efforts to manage those incidents. So this passed unanimously in the House in mid-May. It's now sitting in Senate rules. There's a lot of very positive feedback about it. This will be a great bill for the state. And so we're excited about this legislation coming through this year.
Okay, thanks, Lee. One last update, and it kind of ties into some of the work that the board is going to be focusing on is some work that Glenn Poposky has been doing here. So what has happened is a cross-agency steering committee was created to help steer the direction and approach for a new constituent portal. That work began back in April. The first phase of this effort is a new information architecture design that incorporates personas and standard content types. And more examples of that is, how do I get a business license, a driver's license, some things along those lines. Second phase is going to focus on enabling and leveraging capabilities for agencies to transform their services. And we're looking here to, taking away some of the friction or waste of service time and delivery to residents. And then lastly is the community members will serve as champions of a constituent first mindset within their agency to align agency services with the portal, and will also help champion and influence transformation for their agency services. So that's about it for updates. Let's get now to our committees. And we had some scheduling challenges over the last 3 months. And again, Rocco, I see you here on my screen now. So again, I want to thank you for all your efforts behind the scene if you weren't on earlier. But as a committee, when we talked back in March, there was agreement that there would be initially 2 committees that we would target. And those were around digital transformation, and the other one was around cybersecurity and privacy. And today we're here to tell you those committees have been created. So yeah, Tracy, got your hand up? I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just had a quick question about the report, and I couldn't get my hand up faster earlier. I just wanted to ask toward the broadband strategy that you've devised. Is that encompassing of and connected to MCNC, which provides a lot of broadband and previously had been the recipient of some federal grants, or are we talking about sort of 2 parallel strategies or complementary strategies? And in full disclosure, I'm also on the board of MCNC, and so I just want to make clear, I hear the same thing from 2 places, and as an IT person, that always makes me nervous because all too often we do the same thing in many places unexpectedly or without recognizing there might be other approaches.
Tracy, I think it's one strategy, and the way I would like to answer your question is that we as a state are going to look at any and all opportunities that further the goal and achieve the metrics that we're trying to get across the state. So again, earlier, as I said, as far as the different technologies that are available to us, it's all in the toolbox, and we're going to leverage the toolbox as best we can to achieve the outcomes we're trying to get to. MCNC is fully aware of what our plan is. They have been briefed. We continue to brief all stakeholders as much as we can. Any stakeholder group we can get out to, we have been talking about this plan. And so it's going to take a village to make this happen. And we all have to work together. We're really excited about the partnerships here that we're going to be seeing at the local and county level to help further this along as well, because, again, we're going to need, especially around literacy and enablement, we're going to need a lot of that grassroots local community involvement to help with messaging and working with the residents in their area. Nate, I don't know if you want to add anything to that or.
No, I think you actually covered it pretty
Okay.
well. You know, if board members are aware of groups that would benefit from additional engagement around this plan, please let us know. We'd be happy to come talk about it anywhere that someone will listen for a few minutes. And we also have some relevant fact sheets and talking points that explain the details of the plan and can be useful for advocates of closing the digital divide to help spread the message, and we'll make sure the board gets those as well. Okay.
And thank you for that question. And apparently I missed, Madam Auditor has a question in there in our chat message. Are there any consequences to local governments in House Bill 813 if they do not report cybersecurity incidents? Lee, do you know the answer to that question off the top of your head?
So I would say if they, an obvious consequence is if they engage in payment or the fallout from the cybersecurity incident. I'm actually confirming with the original legislation right now to see. I don't recall that they would be penalized specifically, other than the outcome of what may happen with the incident. But I'm rereading the legislation currently, and I'll get back to you on that, Auditor Wood.
Mr. Secretary, I was just going to say that I've dealt with local governments as a member of the Local Government Commission for decades. And there are those who will work with you, comply, and then there are those that are just absolutely not going to. So again, it's great to put in the requirement for, reporting, and this is really, really serious and critical. I'm not sure that all get it. So I just wondered, the requirements are not that effective unless there's some consequences given the number of local governments we have across the state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it looks like we can certainly flag that with Representative Sain. I think that's a really good point, and try to see how we can get some more teeth with that reporting requirement.
We're also, Madam Auditor, looking to how do we start increasing the awareness of programs and services that are available to local governments as well. So we want to make sure this is done in partnership and doesn't have the appearance that it's the state swooping in to play big brother. That's not the intent here at all. We want to get the state to a certain security level posture, and we have mechanisms and methods to do that, or the local entity could elect to do. But the bottom line is we have to get to the same place. And so even later today, I will be doing a podcast with the County Commissioners Association, and really the top two topics is around broadband and cybersecurity as well. How can we make one team, one fight, and improve North Carolina overall from a security posture? So thank you. We do know there's some stakeholders that are also looking at that bill. And we're doing some educational opportunities with them as well, trying to make sure that they understand what the full portfolio of services that are available to local government and critical infrastructure that exists today. And those services and portfolios are expanding. And if in fact we are able to increase the amount of cybersecurity spend we have here in the state, we will be able to make that a more robust portfolio for all to benefit from. Someone else is going to ask a question.
Yeah, Mr. Secretary, this is
hi, Jeff.
Just chiming in on Madam Auditor's comment. Having been a mayor, having served in the legislature, very few pieces of legislation actually have remediation or penalties associated with them directly. But there is always the method that is reined in, as Charlie will know, is the indirect influence and impact on your appropriations and budgets. But I think that's an area where, at least in the cyber area and some of the others, we can add some direction, perhaps, and ways to encourage compliance.
Okay, again, we appreciate any and all help that can be offered, because again, our goal here is it's not about the executive branch and state government, it's about North Carolina and our overall security posture. As I said earlier, we're only as strong as our weakest link. And I think right now, since 2017, and Rob, you may have a better number than I do, but we're over 30 incidents. across county, local municipalities, critical infrastructure. And that number is growing by every week. And so we have to do more. Nothing's more frustrating than expanding the time and energy to go out and do an assessment, show where all the vulnerabilities are, and that assessment gets put in a filing cabinet and nothing gets done with it. And a year later, the entity is victimized by everything that was told to them a year ago. We have to make sure that we're actually doing follow through and some of those types of actions, and not do it in a collaborative partnership manner, not do it in a hierarchical manner. And that's what I would really hone in on here, was talking with the County Commissioners Association, the League of Municipalities, whomever other stakeholders are out there, to really get us rallied around a unified front, and leverage the best that we all have to offer. Okay. Nicole, did I miss any other questions? And I apologize for missing questions. I get on a roll, so thank you for interrupting me. Okay, we want to get, so we were talking about committees, and we formed our 2 committees, digital transformation. So I'm happy and thankful that Tracy has volunteered to be our chair for that committee. Look forward to serving with her, even though Coach K is leaving. I don't know. And then likewise for our cybersecurity and privacy committee, Jeff has volunteered to be the chair for that one. So again, thank you both very much. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julie to talk more about the committee details. So Julie.
Great, thank you. Just want to make sure the PowerPoint slide is up and showing. So you all have heard about the committees at past meetings. Just as a quick refresher, the statute that created the IT Strategy Board authorized us having committees. The role identified in the statute is to share best practices and new developments, and to identify existing state IT problems and deficiencies, and just generally to explore topics of importance. Committee members were expecting to meet up to once a month, plus prep. Staff will support the meetings, and we at Fountain Works are here supporting DIT staff, so we will be supporting you all as well. In general, the board chair is appointing the committees. There's also the option for technical advisory groups. Right now, we're just talking about committees. The committees, our plan on an ongoing basis would be for the committees to meet in between full board meetings and report out at the full board meetings. Because the committees haven't had a chance to meet yet, we are going to be using part of today's meeting for the first meeting for each of the committees. So the Digital Transformation Committee will be one of the committees meeting today, and as the secretary mentioned, Tracy will be the chair. One of the first things that the committee is planning on looking at today is the purpose and goals, but the draft purpose and goals are on the screen. So it's really developing a vision and mission and goals for the state's digital transformation strategy and advocating for priority approaches for the strategy. The committee's intent is to provide overarching strategic guidance, but really to enable the staff to leverage the technology, people, and processes to make constituent interactions with the state easier. And then the Cybersecurity and Privacy Committee, likewise, Jeff Tarte is the chair, and one of the first things that the committee will be discussing today is the purpose and goals. The draft is up on the screen. As you all have been discussing, the purpose is to look whole of state, not just IT infrastructure, not just state government, and to advocate for legislative action regarding statewide cybersecurity and privacy. Some of the ideas include looking at workforce development and training related to cybersecurity, establishing partnerships for cybersecurity, and pulling together different projects to help promote cybersecurity in the state infrastructure as well as in local governments. So there have been members of the board that have been asked to serve on both of these committees. The committees also will be looking at inviting other members outside of the board to bring in some of that technical expertise. So one of the things they'll be looking at today is the technical support, other people that they might want to have join the committees. So they wouldn't be IT strategy board members, but they would be committee members. We'll pause before we go into committees and see if the rest of the board has any questions. But when we are ready to go into committees, those of you that are assigned to a committee will be automatically moved to a breakout room. There's a little lag on Teams, but it will pop up and then it'll give you a countdown and move you to a breakout room. If any of the members that are not on a committee want to join one of the committee meetings for today, you'll stay in the main room and Shelley Grogg on the Fountain Works team will move you. If there's a lot of people that want to move into committee rooms, then it might take a couple minutes, so just be patient with that process. There are a few people that might want to float between the different committee rooms. The most effective way to do that is to use the chat button when you're in the committee room and just ask to be moved. Again, it might take a minute. We've only got one host that's able to move people, but she'll see the message and be able to move you. So the two committees will meet in breakout rooms. Everyone else on the board does not need to move to a breakout room. They can leave the meeting for, I'm going to say for an hour. It'll be 45 to 60 minutes. And then the two committees will report back to the full board. I have lost my ability to stop sharing. Sorry. All right, so with that, I want to just briefly turn it back to the chair to see if anyone has any questions about the committees or the process right now. So again, if you're assigned to a committee, you would move to a committee room. If you're not assigned, you're welcome to leave the meeting for about an hour, and then we'd encourage you all to come back afterwards.
Yeah, and to that point, thank you, Julie. We recognize that some here may have some other pressing issues, so we just did not want to assume that you would have the ability to sit and be part of this. But if you're able to, please let the Fountain Works team know through a chat, and they will definitely get you assigned into the breakout room that you choose. With that said, are there any questions or concerns before we move forward to our breakout rooms? And I'm not seeing any, so I have 9:42, so I would ask that we try to reconvene back at 10:45 for those that may not be participating in a committee session, and could use the hour to do some other things and then come back for the brief back from the committees. Okay, why don't we go ahead and move then? Thanks, everybody. That concludes this part of our meeting. We're going to go to breakout sessions, and then we'll reconvene at 10:45.
So there'll be a brief lag, but then you'll get a message to move to the breakout rooms.